Good afternoon.
I think you want to talk to us tonight.
Yes, good afternoon. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to present to you our biennial budget for 2015, 2016. I know you were hoping that this would be Monday Night Football, but instead we're going to spend a little time talking about budgets. Before I get into the numbers, I want to thank you and our department heads, as well as all of our city employees who for the past several years have helped us maneuver through the most challenging financial times we've ever experienced. Thanks to your support and leadership and the efforts of our city, we have continued to provide our residents and businesses with quality city services while encouraging new investments, jobs, and housing options in our community. I've said this before, but I think it's worth repeating. At a time when the nation's economy was in dire straits and our population nearly doubled, we successfully faced the challenge of providing services to our expanded population despite a 13% reduction in staff and a reduced budget that totaled millions of dollars over the past 6 years. Earlier this year, we established 4 key priority areas of focus that you agreed with during your council retreat. They include address economic development priorities, serve our vulnerable and diverse populations, enhance the customer service and productivity of our employees, and develop a sustainable fiscal strategy. While the 2015-2016 budget focuses resources in each of these areas, we already have successes to report from the current budget period that I would like to take a few minutes to share with you. In the area of economic development, we've had a lot of success. The city partnered with the Aerospace Futures Alliance and other industry members to secure $12.5 million of funding from the state to build a new training facility on the former Renton Chamber site overlooking the airport. The AFA recently hired Laura Hopkins as the facility's executive director. Laura's experience and expertise are well respected in both the private and educational sectors, and she has been busy securing partnerships and clarifying the center's business plan. The new name of this facility will be the Washington Advanced Manufacturing Training Institute. So if you can remember that, you're really good. The city, in its role as project manager to construct the facility, continues to provide support. I am excited at the potential world-class training this facility may offer. As promised, we have been focusing a lot of our effort to downtown redevelopment. This year, I convened a series of meetings with downtown property and business owners, developers, and community stakeholders to seek the input on how to move downtown redevelopment forward. We received a lot of interest from potential developers. Within the next couple of weeks, the ground will be broken on a $10 million downtown apartment complex at South 2nd and Main Street that will feature 101 apartments and 3,500 square feet of retail on the main floor. And in conjunction with this exciting project, the city will be working on converting South Main Street between 2nd and 3rd to two-way traffic with a design that will make one of the primary gateways into the downtown much more pedestrian-friendly and inviting. Later this evening, the council will consider repurposing some of our community development block grant funds to create a program that provides financial assistance as an incentive for owners in downtown Renton to rehabilitate their buildings. Such a program will encourage private investment in downtown, provide marketable space for new and expanding businesses, achieve significant visual improvements, and improve downtown's overall health and safety. Last month, with the help of the Chamber, staff convened a successful meeting of nearly 50 downtown business and property owners and other stakeholders to discuss the formation of a downtown business association. We see the formation of such an association as a key piece in our redevelopment efforts. The 2015-2016 budget provides staff and other resources to continue progress in these and other efforts downtown. And we're happy to let you know that we will be reinstating flower baskets in the downtown area next spring in collaboration with downtown businesses in cleaning up and beautifying the area.
Yay.
As you know, the redevelopment of the Highland Sunset area has been a priority for the city for over 20 years. In 2013, the council adopted a revitalization plan that identifies a number of key public and private sector projects to achieve the plan's objectives. In addition to the number of public infrastructure projects completed to date, construction of the Highlands Library and residential projects that are being built by Colpitts Development and the Renton Housing Authority will dramatically change the appearance and livability of the area. We also plan to request funding from the state's capital budget this next session to help fund a new 3.7-acre neighborhood park that is part of our vision for the Sunset community. The proposed budget provides resources that will allow us to continue progress in the downtown and the Highlands areas. It also calls for continued efforts to revitalize commercial sectors in the Benson Cascade area and the North 3rd and 4th corridor, in addition to balancing future development in the South Lake Washington Boulevard and the Landing area. The second item on the list of building an inclusive city has been one of my priorities for the past 7 years. We are devoting a tremendous amount of effort in finding ways to better serve our diverse and vulnerable populations. And we are very pleased that our efforts earned Renton a first-place national award this year from the National Black Caucus of Elected Officials through the National League of Cities. Earlier this year, we engaged Benita Horn, a highly respected authority in this region on cultural diversity and social equity, to help us move forward, and in a very short period of time, Benita has helped us to make progress toward our stated goals. We've been providing training for our employees on race, equity, and inclusion, and by the end of this year, most of the city employees will have received the training. We have strengthened our relationship with our community liaisons, and we're in the process of formalizing their commitment to the city. And we are developing an equity lens that will help us evaluate several internal systems such as job recruitment and purchasing, with the incorporation of inclusion as one of the guidelines. To address the needs of our senior population, we propose to eliminate the pet license fee for low-income seniors. Each eligible senior can have up to 3 permanent pet licenses. We're also amending our requirement for reduced utility rates. Currently, the rate is available for only dual occupancy households where both members of the household meet disability or low-income senior requirements. Our proposal changes the requirement to only one member of the household that needs to meet this requirement. The current standard has been a very high bar for many low-income senior households to qualify for this utility rate discount. It is important to recognize that it takes an entire community to better serve our most vulnerable populations. We've made great progress over the past 2 years thanks to community partnerships. One example is the arrangement we worked out with the Renton Youth Advocacy Center for utilization of the Tiffany Park Neighborhood Center. This organization offers after-school and summer programs for local youth and teens between the ages of 12 to 17. They have great programs including tutoring, community service, sports, reading, interviewing skills, and basic life skills. Our staff has worked very hard with Director John Houston to help grow and sustain this program. This has allowed us to utilize a vacant city facility for a program that benefits the entire community. And we're most excited over the success taking place at the Center of Hope at City Hall, located downstairs in the refurbished space that everybody knows used to be our jail. Our partnership with REACH has resulted in many positive outcomes for homeless women and children, which some of us heard Thursday night at their annual fundraiser. This city can be very proud for finding a creative way to partner with our local churches and providing a program that has proven to be so successful in just such a short period of time. Benita will be providing you with an update on our efforts to address cultural diversity and inclusiveness in our community this next November once she completes her assessment and recommendations. In the area of enhancing productivity and customer service, we have literally changed the workforce culture here at City Hall. We have created an environment that accepts change, embraces creativity and performance improvement, with a management team that provides vision, leadership, training, and motivation. We continue to focus on our goal of being the best city in King County with great customer service, strong partnerships, and measurable progress in everything we do. We have created a culture that works to solve issues for our citizens instead of passing the buck. Our employees, from police officers to our stormwater workers, continue to find ways to meet the needs of our citizens while often going that extra mile to provide special service. I continually receive comments from citizens and business owners praising individual employees for their professionalism and for the services that they have provided. This commitment to service is also equated into improved productivity as employees find new and better ways of doing business. Our ability to meet service demands these past years with fewer employees and reduced budgets is due to the tremendous efforts of department administrators, managers, and our entire workforce. Another indicator that our employees are internalizing the challenge to improve our productivity and customer service is the increasing number of training sessions conducted by fellow employees. And the results can be seen by the number of thank you notes that I'm sure you've seen that are posted on honor walls throughout City Hall. This proposed budget continues the staff training efforts by utilizing outside expertise when needed, while still leveraging training by our own staff when possible. The fourth priority is building a sustainable fiscal strategy. Every year, the cost of maintaining basic city service increases, but our revenues do not grow at the same rate. Renton is no different than most other cities, and many cities and businesses in our state struggle to keep pace with inflation and the cost of employee wages and benefits. In 2001, the state limited the growth on property tax to 1% per year. As you know, the motor vehicle excise tax was repealed, and last year the state reduced the share of revenue we used to receive from the liquor excise tax and from liquor profits. Cities receive a very small portion of the property and sales tax collected. For each dollar collected for property taxes, Renton receives 22 cents. For sales taxes, we receive less than 10 cents for every dollar collected. Still, we depend on these two categories that represent more than 50% of our total revenues that are required to pay for police, fire protection, city parks, road repairs, and a host of other city services. In addition to all of this, the years of recession exposed the volatility of our revenue structure and the vulnerability of relying on sales tax. While overall sales taxes have increased in recent years due to the improved economy, the amount we receive is just now back to the level received in 2008. Every year, the cost of maintaining basic city services increases at a rate higher than our revenues grow. Nearly every jurisdiction is facing the same financial challenges of meeting rising costs with a limited available revenue sources. You can take Seattle as an example. Despite a multi-billion-dollar base and a strong local economy, with hundreds of millions being spent in new construction today, Seattle residents recently had to vote to create a new metropolitan park district to generate enough taxes to pay for deteriorating parks and facilities. And now they'll be moving forward to ask their voters this next November to tax themselves to meet police and fire needs. The same scenario is playing out in many cities and in the county. With your support, we have proposed instituting a business and occupation tax to address the projected budget shortfall, which I'll explain in more detail in just a couple of minutes. The choices we have to keep the city financially healthy are very limited. The city council must balance the budget and is faced with hard choices: either reduce services or raise revenue to close the gap between expenses and revenue. As in past years, the budget I present here today mixes aspiration with reality, hope with hard truth, and inspiration with despite fiscal challenges. And it includes input from you and from members of our community. I convened the Mayor's Budget Advisory Group again this year to meet with each department to review the services we provide, our successes and our challenges, and to provide guidance on priorities for the city as we move forward. This group was comprised of local residents, business owners, and community leaders. They met over a period of several weeks with every department head and our finance department. In addition to examining our preliminary budget projections, they had an opportunity to review several of the policies and programs that we instituted during the last budget process, including the recommendations that they had made to us. They reviewed our recommendation to address the ongoing deficit in revenues with a business and occupation tax, and in the end, they concurred with the need to raise revenues in order to maintain service levels. They also made suggestions on how to spread this tax more broadly throughout the business community while still protecting small businesses. As always, they provided invaluable input that has helped guide us through this current budget. This budget reflects several key priorities and suggestions for cost savings recommended by the advisory group this year. The budget that I'm submitting to you today is not filled with many new programs or initiatives. It was prepared with a continued commitment of improving productivity and efficiency and operating within our means while striving to achieve our stated goal of becoming the best city in King County. So this evening, I'm presenting a balanced budget for 2015-2016. The total budget for the two-year period is $486 million, of which nearly $230 million is for the general government fund that covers the bulk of our city service that is obviously very critical to our residents in the local business community. Ewan will follow me in a couple of minutes to provide you with more detail on this proposed budget. And in the coming weeks, each department administrator will provide you with specifics of their department budgets. We are not rolling out any new programs, but have identified a few key areas where we have made significant cuts in the past and now need to make adjustments to keep up with the increasing demand. I'm recommending adding back a few key positions that were lost during the height of the recession. Overall, this budget proposes adding 9 positions, 1 that is limited term, 2 that will be funded by the utilities divisions, and 6 in the general fund to allow us to keep up with the increased demand of services. A number of these positions, especially in community and economic development, are funded through the dramatic increase in permit activity and fees. We are also proposing to add back 2 positions within the police department to staff the school resource officers in our high schools that were eliminated early in the recession. This is possible thanks to a partnership we have developed with the Renton School District in sharing the cost of these 3 officers dedicated to the high schools. Now, I just said we're adding 2 and we have 3. We did put an officer already at Renton High School through our regular budget that we already had in place. You will also see a request to increase our human services funding by $48,000 over the next 2-year period. This is in response to a request by our Human Services Advisory Committee that recently presented you with its recommendations of funding local human service programs. As you recall, we're only able to fund about half of the requests we received due to limited available budget. This added budget request will allow us to meet the financial needs of a number of smaller requests and help these agencies continue to meet some of the critical needs in the community. This budget also addresses some of our badly needed maintenance and capital projects that we've had to defer over a number of years. Some of the projects include repairing the pilings and float structures and control erosion and stabilize the bank between Ivers and the North Picnic Shelter at Coulon Park, and stabilizing the riverbank on the shoreline of the Cedar River, and updating some of our irrigation system to reduce water use. As I mentioned earlier, in order to meet our increased costs without reducing services to our citizens and business community, this budget includes the implementation of a business and occupation tax beginning in 2016. This tax is already being collected by many cities in Washington, and Renton is the only city our size in King County not to have a B&O tax. This is a tax that we have always resisted due to the increased challenges it places on the business community, especially small businesses. To address these concerns and to protect small businesses, you approved our recommendation that exempts businesses doing less than $1.5 million in annual sales and places a maximum cap on taxable sales to protect large companies like the Boeing Company. While this tax will help us cover our anticipated revenue shortfall and allow us to conduct some long overdue maintenance, the rate remains much lower than any other jurisdiction that collects this tax throughout the region. Before deciding on implementing the B&O tax, we worked closely with our business community to get their input. We held 2 forums in collaboration with the Renton Chamber of Commerce, worked closely with the auto dealers, had several meetings with the Boeing Company, as well as other local businesses. It was encouraging to hear from our business leaders that they believe the city has used its resources responsibly, and they understand our need for additional revenue. Even though nobody embraced the implementation of a new tax, the businesses we met with, as well as members of our budget advisory group, all felt it was important that the city not reduce the level of service we currently provide. Renton has a rich history of embracing the future and making its mark. We are a city that is proud of its past, but even more excited about what the future holds. A future where all of our residents have access to all of the opportunities, jobs, and culture that Renton has to offer. There are exciting times ahead. Last week, we participated in the groundbreaking of a new 4-star hotel that will be built at Southport on Lake Washington. This beautiful $180 million facility will feature 350 quality rooms, fine restaurants, and a 40,000 square foot conference center. In addition, IKEA will be building a new $75 to $100 million store in our community, and another $40 million on new projects are already going through the permitting process. If we are to remain a city where businesses want to invest and parents want to raise families, we must build on our successes rather than falling back into status quo. In closing, what you have in front of you is a fiscally responsible budget, a budget that takes care of basic city needs sufficiently and sensibly. I welcome your thorough evaluation of this proposed budget, and I'm hopeful of your support. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
It's easy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Now I guess it's time for Ewood. And are we gonna get a copy of your budget message, because it wasn't in our books?
We'll have to just in a few minutes.
Thank you.
Won't you, Jason?
No, we don't have it.
Good evening, council. Like the mayor said, tonight we are beginning our whole budget process, and we'll be spending next few weeks to go through our budget. And here is our preliminary schedule. And after tonight's overview, you will start seeing the departments coming forward and provide you with more in-depth review of their budget. We did try to fine-tune this, but it is very, very packed calendar for each of the meetings. So we will be starting 4 o'clock sharp in the next few weeks, and in order to cover everything. And as always, anytime you have any questions during the discussion or deliberation process, feel free to ask along the way. And if we cannot provide the answer at the time, we will definitely provide follow-up answers, either both in writing as well as in the following meeting.
Even, excuse me just for a second.
Yes.
I guess we have a really tight schedule, and I want to be sure that everybody gets enough time to ask the questions and gets the information. So what I'm proposing is that if we don't get through this schedule for the committee of the whole, like for next October 13th, if we don't get all the way through all the departments, that we meet as a council and then come back and finish out that section that evening, so that we stay on schedule and get this all approved. I think it's important that we stick with the schedule so we can get the budget done.
So you mean we'd continue it past 7 into,
No, what we would do is
Council
we
time?
would continue, we would adjourn the committee of the whole at 6:45, meet as a council, and then after the council meeting was over and adjourned, we would then finish up, meet again as a committee of the whole.
So we'll definitely work with council in terms of the timing and scheduling, and we'll try to use our time as efficiently as possible. But again, feel free to ask questions along the way.
Or the other option would be to start the committee, if it looks like we're gonna be overrunning, then the next week we could meet the committee of the whole, start earlier. So I'm looking for,
Mr. President, I think the way you described it is a good way to do it.
okay, so that,
I got no problem with
okay,
that.
not seeing any other objections, that's the way we'll do it. I'm hoping that we don't have to do that, but just in case, I wanna have a contingency so that we're ready to,
Mr. President,
yes.
I would recommend we do it the other way, because, you know, if we break at 6:45, have our council meeting, and then require staff to remain after that, you know, now we get into, the additional time that staff has to remain here on that subject. I would much rather we just plug that into the normal day's work by coming earlier the following week.
I mean, I'm looking for,
It's a money savings thing to me.
well, I don't think, the thing is the staff that'll be here presenting is not getting paid overtime, so, but I want to be conscious of their time too, so I don't have any problem in saying, adjusting it so that we come in earlier the following week. My goal would be that
Stay
we
within
don't
the
have to
time
do that,
scheduled.
but I'm just looking so that we can get through
Yes.
this and get the information that we need.
Mr. President, if I could, I think staff is certainly, we try to, we'll accommodate whatever schedule the council wants. We recognize some of you, are working during the day and everything else, so it becomes, we've already got you coming in pretty early, and we're certainly prepared to stay if we need to, extra hours or to have extra meetings, but I think we were trying to be sensitive to the fact that you all have busy work schedules during the day, and we're just trying to accommodate that, as well as recognize we want to be as efficient as we can in providing the information. So we're happy to do it either way, but certainly staying, we've done this before in prior years where we've had meetings up to council meeting, and then if we needed to have a conversation after or continue the discussion, we can break. Our meetings don't go, I hope I'm not jinxing future council meetings, but generally they haven't gone late, so conceivably, we could still be finished by council at 8:30 or so and have another 45 minutes to an hour and still have everybody home by 10, so we're happy either way.
Well, we can see how it goes and then make a decision, but I just wanted to throw those options out so that
Yeah.
nobody's surprised.
Yeah, I think one more thing is important, is a little bit different this year, is that we actually spend a lot of time throughout the year already going through the capital project prioritization and also discuss with council on our budget financial situation. So really, we're going to just doing continuation of what we already started. I don't think a lot of information you will receive tonight or in future weeks will be a surprise to you. It's just now it's come more organized when we have a budget to go through. So with that said, we do have a budget, and our citywide budget, the revenue side is $487.5 million, and the expenditure side is $485.9 million. And the expenditure appropriation side recommended budget is 6.2% higher than 2013 and 14 adopted budget. That percentage is kind of low because we had substantial major capital projects during the 13-14 biennium. And so once we remove the capital project, the actual increase is 12.4%. And of that 12.4%, and also all this information is in our budget book. And most of the things I'm going to cover tonight is going to be in the budget highlight section on page 1, section 1, page 13. that actually describe the whole budget, and then we have additional sections. But, so tonight, we're just going to go through the overview. I will have lots of percentages in there, but the information are all contained in the budget document. The personnel cost related growth is 14.4% over the 2-year period. And the reason we have a higher percentage growth in the personnel cost is primarily because what was not in the 2013-14 adopted budget. As you recall, we do not have any wage adjustments included in 13 and 14's budget when we went through the budget process. The contract actually didn't get settled until later of 2013, and some of them actually just recently settled in 2014. So in 2015 and 16 adopted budget, you will start seeing the wage adjustment for the whole 3-year contract period. And so that is one big driver. And also, in addition to that, the pension cost for PERS employees, that is most of the, over half of city employees is covered by state retirement system, public PERS, public employee retirement system. And that rate, contribution rate, increased from 9.25% to 12.5%. So it's the third increase in pension costs. So that also contribute to it. And another piece of the personnel cost increase is during the 2013 and 14 budget year, we actually restored some positions, some of them using grant, like the six firefighters we restored during 2013 using SAFER grant. And the grant will expire in 2015, but the general fund will start picking them up for the remainder of the biennium. And so because of those factors, we do have higher than normal personnel cost increase on paper. But again, if we compare year with 2014 year-end adjustment, year-end budget, we're only 5% higher. On the revenue side, it's pretty typical of our revenue picture. 39% of our revenue are from taxes and 29% from charge of service. And the charge for service, as you can see in the pie chart, majority of charge for service actually is utility rates, and the development services is another 2%. So 27% of the 29% is utility systems charges. And then intergovernmental and interfund activities combined is 21%, and then other miscellaneous revenue and capital grants. And we also provide a comparison, or actually a view of our budget by line item. That is where you will see where the money is going. 38% of our costs are personnel related, and this is a citywide budget. So citywide budget includes capital budget and debt service and so forth. So there's a lot of stuff in there, but more than 1/3 of our cost is personnel related. In service and utilities is the next largest sector or portion. It is 20% of our total budget. And this service and utility section includes our payment to Metro, for example, King County Metro, $16 million a year. And that is part of that piece of the pie. And then capital, we actually have a less percentage for capital this year. Last time was about 20%. So this is a reduction in capital for this biennium. And interfund transactions, about 16%. Debt service actually decreased to about 4%. And the reason for debt service percentage decrease from 6% to 4% is for two reasons. We finally paid off our 2004 revenue bond. The refunded portion of the 2004 revenue bond issue will be paid off this year. So that debt service is going away, that portion of debt service is going away. The second and more important portion of the debt service saving is the fact that SCORE Jail is generating more revenues from contracting, from contracts. And so the decision is that they will use the contract revenue to pay for their debt service first. And then the balance will be used to offset the operating costs and then so forth. So by them picking up their debt service, that means the city will be saving about $1.8 million a year on debt service, and that's the general fund portion of debt service. So that's, those two events contribute to the debt service reduction. So that's citywide, and total, in terms of our service areas, and I think you probably remember, we have 6 core service areas: safety and health, responsible government, livable community, mobility, utility environment, and internal supports. And this 6 service area, each provide a core service function for the city, and each one has many, many programs under there. And there's over 190 programs combined under the 6 line of business. And we try to organize our budget both by department as well as by city service area. As you can see, under the city service area, we have 685 FTE in 2015, and 2016 we'll have one more FTE. That is the last SRO officer will be on board January 1 of 2016. And so overall, that's the staffing level we're proposing for the next 2 years. Over half of that, or actually just about half of that number, is in safety and health section. And as you can see, that is the single largest cost sector for the city. And we have done this for a couple of years now, a couple of budget cycles now. We try to look at our operating budget as a whole and divide that into our city population. For this year, we divide into 97,130 residents in Renton. And so the total operating costs come down to just a little bit over $1,800 per year per person for the city. And you can see by each of service area how much they cost. If we do divide that into per day cost, the city's operating cost is just a little bit under $5 per resident. And we do serve not just city residents, we also have over 48,000 employees working in Renton. And city's amenities and services definitely is having them in mind as well. And so if we combine both residents and employees in Renton, and then the service costs drop to $1,240 per person per year, or just a little bit over $3 per day for the service the city operates and provide. So I'm going to switch the gear to general fund now. General fund is almost $230 million, and because it's balanced, so our revenue actually is almost exactly the same as the expenditure. I think we have $640 or something left at the end of 2016. So the general fund is very important because this is the area that is primarily supported by tax. 77% of the revenue source is from tax revenues. And it provides the majority of the core basic services that our community expects city to deliver. And that's, again, police, fire, road, community service, parks, maintenance, and also all the general governmental functions that you see we deliver. And on the revenue side, property tax and sales tax are the two largest, and it's combined is over half of our resources. As the mayor mentioned earlier, our sales tax basically remained at 2008 level 6 years later today. And so really that sector did not grow. Well, it has grown over time, but it's just back to the pre-recession level. And the property tax, again, is limited to 1% growth plus new construction. So both of those sectors been growing very slowly, and that's one of the reasons for our financial challenges. And utility tax actually is one sector that used to be providing very predictable, consistent growth, matching inflation, sometimes higher than inflation. But because of conservation efforts, we are seeing that portion of the revenue start to stabilize or grow minimally. And on the expenditure side, police, fire, court, actually a portion of city attorney's office are really dedicated for public safety. So more than half of our budget is for public safety purpose. Again, similar to what you have seen before, but this is really the general fund portion. Even more pronounced that those services are a majority of our resources. And again, the debt service is a little bit lower. In prior years, our debt service is about 8% of our general fund budget. Now projected 15-16 is only 6% because of SCORE debt service payment. So general fund line item, and this is one area that most of our services are delivered through employees. So 65% of our general fund budget is personnel cost. That is being very consistent from year to year. Sometimes a little bit higher and sometimes a little bit lower, depends on other portion of our budget. But really 2/3 of our budget is for personnel. And interfund service, that's we actually have very strong internal service fund structure that we provide a lot of services centrally and then allocate the cost to all the departments. And so that's the interfund portion of the service charge. And of that number, about 60% is also people related. And so when you combine that and the personnel general fund portion of personnel costs is over 70% of our cost is personnel related. Talked about debt service before, and we mentioned about service and utilities. In general fund, that only represents 7%, but that is also a big area that we've been seeing costs increasing much faster in the last few years than usual. And lastly, the intergovernmental section, we are seeing more increase in this budget cycle from the Valleycon contract, as well as the Harbor Patrol contract with Mercer Island. So really our costs being increasing from all areas. You have seen this before, so I'm not going to into too much, but I want to start looking at what we're looking forward to 2015. We get 20%, 22% of the tax bill, but it is the largest single revenue source for us. And at this time, the preliminary assessed value, according to King County, it will increase by 12% than our 2014's assessed value. And that is just base assessed valuation growth. I just want to point out that the assessed valuation increase by 12% does not mean the city will get 12% higher in property tax. This is a calculation of how our property tax will be calculated. And basically, we start from 2014's base budget, base levy, and add 1% growth limit at new construction. We did have a couple of the small annexations. That's how we get 2015's property tax amount. And we do have a prior year correction and refund that we will be re-levying. And so in 2015, our proposed budget has $36.3 million in property tax. And our actual collection or our actual levy amount in 2014 is 35.5. So the bottom line is 2.2% increase in the proposed property tax for 2015. And because the valuation increase more than our levy amount increase, so the resulting effect is the tax rate for the city's portion of property tax will drop from the current $3.15 to $2.84. This is preliminary, but it's pretty close to final. Sales tax, again, we are pretty strong in sales tax. We are actually, in 2014 year end, we are expecting a little bit higher sales tax, as well as for the next 2 years, the growth, I think, will be a little bit stronger at 4.4%. So with the limitation of property tax growth, and now we just finally getting back to our 2008's sales tax level, which translate into our, on a per capita basis, our tax revenue has been decreasing over the last decade. And if you look at just from 2005 through 2025 proposed, our per capita tax revenue dropped from about $850 per person to just a little bit over $600 per person. And the reason you see a slight increase in 2016, that is with the B&O tax included. And I have shown this chart before that Renton comparatively, our overall tax structure is still very affordable. We compare pretty favorably with our surrounding jurisdictions. With our revenue limitation and with what we have done in the past few years, we do feel that to maintain our current service is become a strength, and staff wants to do the best they can do and provide the high level of service that we always provided. So they stress themselves out. And so that's the reason we are proposing some adjustment to our core services, and to provide and maintain our current service level. That's when we propose the B&O tax. And Mayor already went through the B&O tax structure, and we have been through this many times, so I'm not going to go to the detail of the structure again. I do want to follow up on a question that raised at our last presentation. There's a question that if we dropped our B&O tax rate by half, how can we still generate the same amount of money? I don't think I answered that question. I was thinking of that when we were proposing, we initially proposed 0.1% of B&O tax, and then we proposed to drop the threshold from 5 million to 1.5 and drop the tax rate to 0.85%. That is almost neutral. There's a very small difference in those two numbers. So you have more people paying, but the overall, the bottom line is almost exactly the same. After this, we also then reduce the retail sector from 0.085% to 0.5%. That portion of the revenue reduction is about $400,000. So at this time, we are using $5.2 million as our annualized net B&O tax income. So that is how the projection is at this time. And for 2016, we are using 3/4, so 75% of the full year's revenue in our projection. And so, before we had B&O tax, we had a gap in 2015's budget by about $500,000, actually higher than that. And in 2016's budget gap was $3.8 million initially. And throughout the year, we have more positive revenue information, so we did increase our revenue estimate accordingly. But in the end, we also have higher cost drivers than we initially anticipated. That's the pension rate increase that was not, really we become aware of until later this year, and as well as our medical premium. The way yes,
Is this information in our budget book?
yes.
Can you tell us what page you're on?
So this is in the long range plan section, which should be,
Long range?
so maybe I can spend a minute to go through the budget document, the binder you have in front of you.
I think it would be helpful if we knew where you were, so we could be looking at it and making notes or highlighting, because I'm spending all my time frantically going from page to page, trying to figure out where you're at, and I don't think I'm the only one from looking.
So there's two sections I'm focusing on.
Excuse me? I picked this up on the table, and this is,
Yes, we
does
do
everybody have one of
hard
these?
copy.
It has all of the
There's
slides on
If
it.
you want.
We don't have that.
We don't have that.
I don't know if we, I
This
don't
will make
know
it
how
easier.
many copies we still have.
It would, but I would really like to make my notes and questions in the budget book instead of having to go to numerous documents. But
Sorry about
I
that.
don't know.
And we thought about to put the PowerPoint in your Dropbox, but we didn't think of
It
providing
is in our
hard copy.
Dropbox?
It is.
It wasn't earlier.
It is in your Dropbox. So,
I think the other thing, just as
Yes.
the PowerPoint presentation, we try to distill 600 pages of budget information for you, so there will likely, I don't know that we can direct you to every page. Every page, every slide even has is probably not directly correlating to a page in the budget. We are distilling, but we'll try to do a better job.
some of them,
keeping
right.
track.
And all the charts you're currently seeing are in the section called long range plan. And the long range plan section starts in page 1-40, 37. 1-37.
What was that again?
1-37.
137.
Section 1, page 37.
Okay.
And this graph, this table specifically is on 1-45.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to hit some highlights in our budget book. I'm not trying to go through page by page or chart by chart or table by table. And I know we're going to have more time going through them when we go through department by department presentation. So the budget would be a no tax. We are balanced, and in 2017 and 18, we have still a small gap, but it can, I think with the growth of our economy, if we have more activity in our economic development side of the equation, that potentially can be bridged with the growth in our economy. The thing is, if you look out farther out, starting in late 2008 and 2018 and 19 is when the annexation sales tax will go away. And so you started to seeing the gap to widen again. And the projection assumes 100% B&O tax will be available for general fund starting in 2017. And that the school will continue to pay for that on debt service. So we'll continue to see the lower debt service payment from the city. And here is, again, the same page in the long-range plan. The table shows our basic assumptions. Our basic assumption is that we will have some wage increase, but in generally, that is the same rate as inflation, which we're using 2% for the planning horizon. And we are projecting our medical health insurance plan will continue to have about 10% annual growth cost increase escalator. We are working very hard try to bring that back down for various reasons, but that is the current assumption in the basic plan. And the PERS contribution rate, we are hoping that it stabilizes at 12.5% without further growth. And there is still potential that can go to 14%, but we'll wait until the state actually make the next projection before we'll finalize that. So that's basically the expenditure side of the assumptions. Our revenue side of assumption, as I mentioned earlier, we actually projecting pretty robust sales tax growth at 4.4%. I know 4.4% doesn't sound a lot, but that's 2.4% above the rate of inflation, so they're real growth. That's real disposable income to generate real growth. And property tax, we also are projecting pretty healthy new construction. For 2015, we are projecting 1.25%. Actually, we're just right on about $20,000 difference than actual, than preliminary number from King County. And for 2016, we're actually looking at it increase to 1.5%, 1.55% of a new construction increase. But then the economy cycle will go through its cyclical work, and starting in 2018 and 19 is when we are seeing that potentially there will be some slower growth back down to from the current peak. So that's the reason the 2018 and 19 start to seeing a bigger gap that I show on the other table. So we are definitely hoping that all the economic development efforts and activities will bring the gap even narrower. So that is kind of the overview of the global budget. I know I went through that pretty quickly, but I also want to point out that in the binder, toward the end of the binder, the appendix section, in the last section, we have all the budget-related legislation in draft form in there. We have the B&O tax ordinance that in draft form until council approve it. It will be draft form. In there, we also have utility rate increase ordinance and fee adjustment ordinance. And we are amending our pet license ordinance, as Mayor mentioned, the eligibility of senior, and also basically eliminate the $30 they need to pay now to get the permanent license. And we have about 20 of those licenses a year, so we're talking about $600 difference. And we do need to amend our current business license ordinance, both for the inflationary adjustment we talked to council earlier, but also because the timing of the B&O tax, we want to start getting our business license reporting time to sync up with the B&O tax reporting. And then lastly, but not the least, is we have a lot of user fee increases from golf course to pools to permit fees. It's all in the fee schedule section, and all the fees where's the change, it will show as a red. So you can see what fees being adjusted pretty easily. And of course, we'll have property tax ordinance as well as budget ordinance following the end. And we will go through all the department presentation, and in the end, on October 20th, we will, I think I should have that, yeah. On October 20th is when we will conduct our official public hearing. And that is when we will, again, present the revenue information as well as the budget expenditure needs. And hopefully that October 27th, we will report out of the committee of the whole committee, and then the legislation will go through first reading. So that's
Mr. President?
the plan.
If I could, just to help kind of wrap this up, if the council, I think between now and next week, it would probably be most helpful for you to go to page 1-13. That's the budget overview, budget highlights. 1-13 through 1-26 will give you a really good overview of everything that's in the budget that's changed and that we are proposing. If you want to look at the revenue side, you can go to starting on page 1-46. And that works through to about page 1-56, I believe, 1-55. Those two sections, those two portions of that first section, I think will give you it'll augment the presentation Ewan just gave you in terms of an overview of all of the changes that we're recommending in the budget, as well as the revenue assumptions for each of the revenue categories. So that'll probably give you a pretty good overview before we start into the department presentations next week.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr.
In
Taylor.
addition to that, is it possible even that you can give us the page numbers to all the slides here, to where we
Sure.
can find these, reference these? That would really be helpful, because then we could just go back and...
Okay, yes, and actually all of the charts are in the budget highlight section, which
Right.
is 1-37.
Right.
Starting there, you will see all of them.
All of these are there? Perfect. Great.
So that's all I have for this evening. I don't know if there's further questions or discussion about time.
Any questions for Ewan right now?
Mr. President, yes, one thing, looking at the out years of 2018 to 2019, and it looks as if we're going to be hitting a wall again in terms of, revenue deficits because of the 1% tax going, 1.1% tax going away. Are we making any kinds of plans to augment that, or, not to let that just run up on us? And I did hear you say that, that projection even includes, the full B&O taxes being taken in at that time. So what are we thinking about that? Because that's just right around the corner.
Councilman, we are thinking about it. It'll be frankly very difficult to maintain services when 30% of your revenues are limited to 1%. So we will do everything we can to try to look at economic growth, as Ewan mentioned. We'll do what we can to try to strengthen the economy locally. We'll look at continue to drive efficiency as much as we possibly can. But every local government is faced with this same dilemma, where you've got a significant portion of your revenues limited 1%. You have fixed expenditure cost increases that are at least 2 to 3% a year higher than that, and there's no way to grow your way out of that ultimately or anything else. And so I think one of the things we'll be doing is going to the legislature and saying we have to have some kind of relief on the 1% limitation. Either you allow property taxes to grow at least the rate of inflation, or some kind of relief back to us. The 1% limitation has been exacerbated by the other revenues that the state has pulled back from the cities over the last 2 biennia as well. So they're a combination of things. But as the mayor mentioned in his message, we're certainly not alone. The city of Kent proposed their budget last week. They're looking at tax increases. City of Seattle is looking at tax increases. There are other things that we might be able to do in the future biennia. We could look at lid lifts or something else if as we get to that line. But I think we're trying to get us through, I think, the next 2 Certainly the next biennia, I think we're going to be fine. We'll do everything we can to make sure that we don't create a worse problem for ourselves, which is why I think in this situation, over this biennia, we're only proposing 9 positions, which is virtually a status quo budget through a high-growth time in the city's economy. And that is going to be, it'll, as Ewan mentioned, it will still put stresses on staff, but we're trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can be through this budget cycle, and hopefully we'll see some creative options present themselves by 2016, so we'll be able to work into 2017 and 18 with a little bit better plan. We will obviously keep you all informed, as we have done in the last 4 years, to just try to figure out what we can do, but I certainly don't have an answer now as to how we solve this long-term, given that we are saddled with the mathematical problem that you can't solve.
Mr. President.
Yeah, Corbin.
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Covington's answer, and we pay him and our finance director to be very thoughtful and sometimes very conservative in how they're managing this. I think that answer may be a little bit overly pessimistic, though, in that the economy, it's really been ragged. And I agree with your point about every other city having the same problem, but everybody's been subject to the same, I guess we're technically not in a recession anymore, but I think you said yourself, we're back up to the 2008 sales tax receipts. That's pretty bad for 2014 to be there. So it may be that this might work itself out a little better than we hope. I know that in the big scheme of things, we were, we were a city that was sort of benefiting from the fact that we always had too little of a share of retail, and we were kind of getting our share back, and that was helping. So we had zoned a lot of areas for retail that hadn't previously been zoned that way, and we're starting to see our sales tax base grow. And I mean, I want you to know I'm right there with you, Mr. Covington, if we have to do something more exotic or severe, but I think there's room for hope that by 2 or 3 years out, we might see sales taxes helping to make up for some of that. Yeah.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr.
And what I'm hearing from other jurisdictions is that in their being, having to consider these tax increase proposals, because they're thinking about, making sure that there isn't going to be any kind of shortfalls down the road, and making sure that they can creatively solve their fiscal problems today. I'm just wanting us to think about having conversations about being proactive about this, and I think that a lot of that has to do, especially, Jay, when you talk about approaching our legislators, has to do with educating our residents in terms of, just like we did with the B&O tax when we went out to the business community and, got buy-in by getting them to understand the problem, the services that we needed to provide, and they, weren't exactly doing cartwheels and somersaults about it, but they understood that it had to happen. And having those kinds of direct conversations early on so that we can get buy-in from our residents to understand what needs to happen in order for us to sustain our services. The other thing, too, that I've got my eye on is our growing number of residents. We're up to 97,130 residents. We were just at 94 just about a year and a half or so ago. So we're going to be at 100,000 folks here right around that time, too. And what kind of impact is that going to have on us? So just having the conversations, talking about it, educating our residents, getting them to understand and buy into the possibilities of what may have to happen.
I would just reiterate a little bit. I think Councilman Corman, thanks. You're right. You pay us to be warriors, which we are. You and I are key warriors. That said, I think you're right. Looking 4 years out, having a 3% problem, that is not something that we can't manage our way out of if we just keep ahead of it. So we'll figure out a way to get through this, but it is out there. So all the things that both you and Councilman Taylor have said, we'll certainly do.
I would like to remind the council and the public is this council and this administration has for years been looking forward, and that's why we're in the position that we are. We're very fortunate that we have people who use conservative estimates so that we do end up with a balanced budget, and sometimes we end up with surpluses. So I'm sure the goal of all the council people that are sitting here today is that we continue the work that we've done in the past, and that is at our retreats, we have financial projections. We take a look and we talk about what we can do and what needs to be done, and about talking with our legislators of other taxes. And what I admire most about this city is the first thing we don't look at is how do we raise taxes? How do we figure a different way to get more funding and revenue? We look at the projections that are coming our way. Are they reasonable? I agree with Mr. Corman that I think the economy is turning. I see more, we were at the groundbreaking for that new hotel. They're looking at 2,000 jobs. Now, those jobs are going to be all the way from entry level to here, but those are things that are going to, Boeing's is talking about going to 52 planes a month by 2018.
2018.
By 2018, that's going to hopefully mean a few more jobs around here. So I think we will continue to watch that, and I think that's just a continuation of what we've been doing for the last few years. So yeah, it'd be really nice to say we're going to go out now and solve 2018 problems, but we can't do that until we learn what the future brings.
I wanted to weigh in on this conversation a little bit, because I agree with all of you, what you said. I really want to emphasize one thing that's made a big difference with Renton compared to a lot of other jurisdictions, and that's our workforce. I was talking about the cultural change and the fact that we're setting admirable goals, and we're creating a culture where we're trying to figure out how to solve problems, how to serve the public better with fewer resources. At the same time, as Ian was pointing out, our workload has continued to grow, so we are forced at this point in time, in order to maintain it, to add a few resources back. But it doesn't change the fact that we're still totally committed to efficiencies and that culture in which we look at creative ways to do things. The reason that we're able to put police officers back in the high schools is because we developed a partnership with the school district, and they're funding a big chunk of that. Those partnerships are going to be critical for us as we move forward. It's the same thing with providing services for the youth in the community, of working with the Renton Area Youth Group, as an example, with a city facility that we couldn't afford to continue to operate, but with their efforts and their volunteers and the community involvement, we're able to provide those services in conjunction with the public sector, and that's exactly what we're going to have to do more of. But I don't think we have to be doom and gloom. I think that the city is really in good shape. I thank my lucky stars every day that we have Ewan and her staff overseeing the budget. It makes a big difference to know where you are. Yes, we want to be conservative, but we also want to be realistic. And I can go home at night and feel very comfortable that I'm not looking at numbers that are going to blow up on us a year from now or 2 years from now. And so anyway, appreciate the comments though, because you're right on target, and I think that we're set for a good future. We're going to have to we have to continue on like every successful company out there and figuring out how to do things differently to meet today's needs and challenges. Boeing, which is at the height of its market, is doing that every single day of the week. So,
If I could too, just to augment that, I think this is the great thing about this council is you all are so responsible, you're thinking ahead. There are other cities and other councils who they'd be spending every dime as soon as they got in their pocket. Again, our projections show 2018, perhaps if nothing changes, and as Councilman Corman indicated, we don't have a good economy, a lot of stuff doesn't have, we're looking at a $1 million deficit on by then $110 million general fund budget. That's less than a 1% variance over 4 years. So we can easily manage that. I think what you have before you is an excellent 2-year budget We address the needs, as the mayor said, through the great staff that we have. We're meeting service to levels. We're putting $8.4 million back into capital investment. We have not been able to do that through the Great Recession, so we're finally starting to reinvest in some things, and as you all know, we leverage those dollars like crazy, so this is a good budget. The next biennium, I think, will also be a good budget, and by then, hopefully, we'll have some things resolved for the 1920 biennial budget. But I think certainly the 2015-16 budget, I think Ewan and I and her staff, and I know the mayor, we feel very confident that this is a good budget that's being proposed before you and doesn't put us in any way in a situation where we're going to have to work ourselves out of a future problem.
Corman,
Oh, well, I was just gonna, I guess, add to what Mayor Law said about how hard the staff have worked. I could think of countless examples, but one of them was just obvious at the groundbreaking. I think this is a great example. So, $180 million hotel and convention center. You know, that kind of money is like half again, I think. Well, I mean, it's about half of what we spent on the landing, if I remember, half of what the construction cost. So it's a huge addition to that part of right on the shore of Lake Washington. It's going to bring in a lot of customers that are going to use our restaurants. A 12-story hotel for people that haven't heard about that, with a lot of rooftop dining, a lot of fine dining of its own. And when I look at how hard the permitting staff worked and the planning department worked, the groundbreaking event, you know, it had lunch, and most of them couldn't stay for lunch because they had to rush back to City Hall to do more work. They were there for the groundbreaking ceremony part of it. Just, I think, really showing the investors how important it was to the city. But when you look at what we're going to get in terms of sales tax revenue from a facility like that, not just its own receipts, but the amount of people that it's bringing in that'll be using our other businesses, it's really bright future. You know, so but I appreciate Mr. Taylor's comments. So also, we do need to be watchful. We can't completely count on that, but certainly for anybody that's maybe watching tonight's budget deliberations, they may not realize how important that sales tax element is to making our city work. And I find it. I mean, we don't want to go and put commercial facilities right in everybody's neighborhood, but where you have land that's appropriate for big retail like this, it really can do two things for us. It can improve our quality of life by giving us places that visiting family members can stay and making it easier to conduct business here for all of us. And then it can also provide us extra dining and shopping opportunities. But in addition to that, it really helps the city coffers. So I can tell our staff understand that because they're working really hard to make it happen. So that's my comment. Thanks.
I have
yeah, go ahead.
two things. One, just piggybacking on what you talked about, and the rezoning. Was it last year that the Planning and Development Committee, I wasn't on it, you, Terry, I think, and Ed, noticed in looking at the zoning, we didn't have any place to put hotels anymore. We zoned hotels right out, and so we changed that. Southport was okay because that came in some years back, but now we're hearing that there's potential for another one right across the street by Triton Towers and other locations. So it's constantly looking, and I heard you say to staff last week that if you see a problem, and it's always been that way, come to council. We're open.
Right.
We're open to suggestions. Not everything is going to fly, but gee, that was a great catch that's
thanks, yeah.
already reaping benefits. So the other thing is, it was brought up twice about the student resource officers in the high schools, the hotels, the high schools, which I'm really glad to hear. And you said that the school district is funding a good chunk. Do you know what percentage?
Higher than half.
Higher than half. Very good. When I see how much, I'm going back to your dollar bill, what percentage of the property tax they get, considerably higher than the city. And that's been something that we know is needed in the high schools. It makes a huge difference when they're there, and I'm glad that the school district has come to the table on that after so many years. Good. Thanks to all of you
Okay.
for a lot of hard work leading up to this time.
We got about 20 minutes left for budget. Do you want to continue on, or?
Do you want me to actually kind of just walk you through the document? You
I think
all
that
received
that
the
would be a
binder
good
today.
idea unless somebody wants to start a presentation. I don't think they're ready, so let's,
That would have been a good idea.
I think we'll wait until next week for presentation.
Yeah.
So this is pretty similar to prior budget, and under executive summary tab is where all the budget highlights of changes and the long range plan is in, and as well as the mayor's message. So that is really the summary of the whole budget document. And then once you pass through that, and there's a lot of information in there. All the changes are identified, and all the multi-year history and comparison are there. And then the next section is winter results section, and this is the effort that the city started in 2007, and we continue on that journey. And that is where we are trying to measure how well we are doing and accomplish what we are trying to accomplish, reaching our business goals and getting the efficiency, the innovation that you guys just talked about that can potentially drive our costs lower. And then the third section is the departmental section, and that's where we're going to spend the next few weeks in. And so each department will come and present their information. And the department section will be both operating as well as the capital. And then the debt management section, that's where all our long-term debts are summarized in there. The general governmental fund debt versus revenue fund debt. I do want to point one thing out, that we actually just recently received an upgrade from Standard & Poor's for our limited GO bonds from AA to AA+, which is great. Which means when we go out and finance, if we want to go and borrow again, it'll be cheaper. And then the next big section is the capital section. And this section has a lot of pages, but as I mentioned earlier, the actual council went through the prioritization criteria and look at the importance of different elements. And also TIP piece is already went through public hearing and approved by council. So while there's a lot of pages, I think you guys are more familiar with that section than any other section.
even let me interrupt just a second. This is one of the sections of the budget that we really already have spent a lot of time on and set the priorities. So I don't anticipate as we go through individual departments that we'll be hearing very much about this, because we basically have set the priorities already and said this is where we want it. So I just want to give a forewarning. Sorry.
No, that's fine, and that's great, jumping anytime. And then the budget by fund section, and that basically goes through fund by fund, how the budget looked like from again, it's a multi-year presentation. And then the appendix section,
That 6-point font will test your eyes, by the way.
Yeah. Should include magnifying things.
but if you know all the section before, that section just there for reference. Again, the fee schedule, I think is important because we are proposing a number of fee changes. And B&O tax ordinance is fresh off the press, and, you know, the city attorney's office spent a lot of time reviewing that. And we now have a B&O tax ordinance for you to consider. So I think all the decision really, information is in this binder. If you do feel that you need some additional information or want some analysis done differently, just let me know and we'll definitely provide that.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we're going to adjourn the committee of the whole, and we'll come back at 7 o'clock.
Thank you.